Marhaba and welcome to Free Palestine Pod, the podcast. I'm Lama Bazzari.
And I'm Lina Hadi. Each week, we will bring you in-depth commentary from Palestine.
Let's talk Palestine. Today on the show, we welcome Lina Abu Akleh, the niece of Palestinian American veteran journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was murdered in May while reporting in Jenin during an Israeli illegal military operation in the occupied West Bank. Lina has become the face of her family's global campaign to demand accountability and was recently named one of Time magazine's 100 Emerging Leaders for 2022. Marhaba Lina and welcome to Free Palestine Pod. Let's talk Palestine.
Hi everyone, marhaba.
Firstly, Lina, I want to extend our deepest condolences to you and your family on the death of Shireen. She was horrifically killed once while doing her job as a journalist in Jenin, and again in Jerusalem during her funeral, when her coffin was viciously attacked by the Israeli riot police. Can you share how this barbaric act made you feel as a family? And can you update us on the investigation in her killing?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. As you said, Shireen was killed twice, once in Jenin refugee camp on May 11th, and the second time in Jerusalem on May 8th, when the Israeli occupation police, fully armed, attacked me and my family, attacked the mourners, attacked the pallbearers with batons, and they started throwing stun grenades. I remember being right after we took her out of the morgue, we were walking towards the hearse and we were in the front, and we were faced by these fully armed police. And I remember it was so scary. I was scared. I was terrified. I was scared that they will steal her body from the casket. And we saw from the pictures, we saw the videos, how her casket almost dropped to the floor. And I think that was one of my biggest fears. But other than that, it was traumatizing being there. I was scared. I was taken inside the hospital to seek shelter because they started throwing stun grenades. And one of the police told me, if you don't move, I'll beat you with the baton. He raised it to threaten me. I know so many people who were beaten, so many people who were injured. And it was definitely so scary. We weren't able to mourn her in peace. They didn't let her go in peace. And until this day, I remember how horrific and scary it was to be in that moment when we were just all there praying, mourning, and everyone was trying to pay their respects for our family.
Allah yarhamha. And
God bless
her family. I can't even imagine how difficult it was. She was really a hero to every Palestinian and to every person on the right side of history. May her soul rest in power. Lina, since the assassination by the Israeli government of your aunt Shireen, you have been thrusted into notoriety. And we're wondering, how are you handling that?
First, it wasn't easy. I remember, I always say this, one of the first interviews I did was AJ Plus. It was the day Shireen was killed, 2 hours even after. And I was someone who spoke to the media. I was never on TV, never had a public social media. So it was very overwhelming at first. It was scary because I didn't know if I was up for this task. But with all the help that I received, whether it was like from family, friends, organizations, I feel like I was able to gain all the experience and the skills needed to continue to push to fight Shireen and for justice, accountability. But at this time I was doing this, I know Shireen would have done the same if it was any of her colleagues, friends, or family members. So her power, her bravery is something I constantly look up to. And I always drive my inspiration from that. At the end of the day, our goal as a family is to keep her memory, her legacy alive, and to keep talking about her. So this is something that is always pushing me, despite how difficult this entire journey was. It's been almost not 7 months now, but I feel it's been over a year. That's how I feel. But at the same time, I also feel like it's been a day. So it's difficult. It's not easy. It takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time, but at the end of the day, I feel this is my calling, and I want to continue talking about Shireen. I want to continue fighting for justice for her, because it's not just a pain, as I was talking to Lama earlier. It's also to make sure that no other family has to go through what ours has. No other Palestinian, no other American family has to endure the horrific journey of losing someone close to you, especially in such a heinous way. So it's not easy. It's definitely tiring, but at the same time, I get very, very happy when I see that it's been 7 months and till today, people continue to talk about Shireen. And this is our goal at the end.
Thank you. Now, Shireen was an icon and revered by millions of viewers throughout Palestine and the Arab world and globally, as she was essentially the voice of ordinary Palestinians, shedding the lens on their daily lives and struggles living under occupation. But for you, she was an aunt. Can you share with us memories that you have with her, and any in particular while you were both in Palestine?
Yeah, Shireen, she was the fun and the cool aunt. Everyone would see her on TV as like she had the serious face on, the journalist face, and she was very objective with her reaction. But behind the camera, Shireen was very funny. She had a really unique sense of humor to her. I always would wait for her to come back from work so she could just sit and tell me about her day. I was very close to her on daily basis. Every single day, I would check on her, see where she is. But I also loved spending time with, especially when I was at home. We would go to Ramallah, go out to coffee shops, or spend time inside at home, watching shows. She loved watching a lot of Arabic shows and the soap operas. So I really enjoyed time with her, doing sometimes absolutely nothing, because she would have such a challenging day, very heavy, very difficult. And then she would like to come home and just relax, spend time with us. I think my favorite memory with Shireen would be during the holidays. We really used to spend time together all the time. I mean, now with Christmas coming up, it's very sad to think about it. I'm trying not to even think about Christmas, because it's going to be very difficult, very emotionally difficult for our family that she's not going to be present with us. Other than that, one special memory is the fact that Shireen and I share the same birthday month. We're both April. So yeah, I feel like this is something I'm going to miss. My last birthday celebration with her also happened to be on Palm Sunday. So it was a very special day. I remember she was so excited to come up, and she called me and she was like, "Happy birthday, Lanusha." That was her nickname for me. It's just, these days are definitely memories that I'll always miss and I'll always look back to. But I know, especially with birthday coming up, with Christmas, I'll miss her wishes on these days.
I hope your family can make it through the holiday season, and I'm sure it's going to be hard on everyone. Lina, in a recent NPR article defending your aunt Shireen, you had mentioned that when she was assassinated, at the exact point and she fell on the ground, that the Israelis continued actually to shoot at her even while she was bleeding on the ground. This is clearly, by all means, this is a clear case of assassination. We're aware of that, irrespective of what the Israeli and United States governments say. But in your expert opinion, as her niece and as the spokesperson for your family, why do you think they assassinated Shireen?
Well, it's not the first time they target journalists. We've seen this happen in the past. Over the past years, we've seen how journalists have been targeted. They've been harassed, arrested. Even Shireen had once stated there were so many instances where they escaped death because they knew that Israeli soldiers, when they target someone, they don't care if you're a journalist, if you're wearing a vest, they will kill you. And at the end of the day, Shireen was a very famous, prominent journalist. She's been there for 25 years, very well known, especially in Jenin. She's been going back and forth to Jenin over the past, even before May 11th. She was there almost every other day, not even weekend, almost every other day she was in Jenin covering all the raids. So for them, Shireen was someone who was reporting the truth. She was uncovering the crimes committed on daily basis. And this is part of their campaign of perpetuating violence, intimidation. It's their way to silence journalists and anyone who dares to even speak out. And also last year, how the Israeli army, they bombed the building of Al Jazeera in Gaza. So this is clearly targeted. And if it was not intentional, as they wouldn't have shot towards her direction almost 16 times, even after she was killed. So these are all important points to note. The fact that even the journalist Shada Hanaisha, who was next to her, I tried to reach to help her, but they continued to shoot, so she couldn't even help her. So this shows that it was clearly targeted, it was intentional, and by no means it was any sort of a mistake.
Lina, can you give us an update on the investigation into her killing?
Yeah, so most recently, my Palestinian Journalist Syndicate has submitted a petition to the International Criminal Court for the prosecutor to open an investigation into the killing, since this constitutes a war crime, killing a journalist. And we still haven't heard back from that. We haven't received any feedback. But also, we've been campaigning for the past 6 months for the U.S. to carry out an independent investigation. And we were encouraged to hear that they will be opening, the FBI, DOJ will be opening an investigation into her killing, since she is a U.S. citizen. Really important for us that all parties take part in providing the evidence available. I mean, we all know at the end of who killed her, but it's really important that there is accountability, that there is justice, so this does not happen again. And we also have the Justice for Shireen Act, which has been introduced to the Congress by Representative Andre Carson. The bill asked for the U.S. to identify if there were any U.S. weapons, any funding went in killing of Shireen. And as for the investigation, this is, again, a full investigation, and we support any sort of independent investigation into this case. But so far, this is where we stand. These are the most recent developments, and we're hoping that the U.S. investigation will lead to accountability and justice, as we've been calling out.
But I mean, Lina, do you really believe that the US government is going to take into consideration your aunt and your family's situation over that of the Israeli government, which they stand so closely by and which they aid and abet to no avail? In fact, Israel wouldn't even exist today if it wasn't for them.
Well, I always say that I'm being hopeful, and the fact that the FBI said that they will open an investigation based on all the news we heard is unprecedented. We haven't seen that happen in the past. So that for us is a step towards the right direction. Shireen was a very optimistic person, Lina, and I always looked up to her optimism, and I tried to get inspiration from that. And I used to always ask her, do you think there will be an end to this occupation? She would always say yes. She said, all empires fall at one point. And I'd like to continue feeding off her optimism and carry that on, and hope that at this time there will be change. This time there will be something different, and that hopefully this investigation will lead to justice and accountability. And the good thing, there's the DOJ, the FBI, they're separate from the State Department and the administration. So in a way, we're hopeful that this investigation will lead to something positive for once. Inshallah.
Now, Shireen's murder, as we mentioned, joins a long list of journalists that have been targeted. Since 2020, there's been about 30 deaths of journalists in the occupied territories. Now, Shireen knew, sadly, the danger when she used to cover Jenin and other areas of the West Bank. And it's testament to her character that she continued to chase the story and shed the lens on Palestinians. Why do you think she kept chasing these stories?
She kept chasing these stories because she wanted the message of the Palestinians across. She wanted to humanize, and she did. She humanized the stories of the Palestinians. She was using a storyteller who always, she wasn't just there to cover the news. She was there to cover the stories of the Palestinians, their messages, their struggles, and to make sure that the world sees the Palestinians from the lens of the Palestinians. And as a Palestinian herself, it was really important that people heard the stories from the ground. And for her, that was her goal. At the end of the day, she chose journalism because she wanted to be close to the people. And that's what she did. You know, I can't remember a time where I met someone who told me they knew Shireen and they would share a story of how she's done a story about, let's say, family member or someone they know. So she was able to enter every single home in Palestine and the Arab world, and nearly just by telling the stories of the Palestinians. And that's what was important for her. And this is what I always say, that it's really important that we continue to amplify Palestinian voices, because this is what she did. Her aim was to amplify Palestinian voices and those who've been silenced, and not just voiceless, those who continue to be silenced. And she made sure that she covers stories from every single angle. She covered stories regarding the economy, politics, the education, sports, social events, and the list goes on and on. Especially women. She loved covering stories on women, as a lot of young girls and women looked at her and they were empowered by her. So she made sure that she also covers their stories. And it's really important because she was able to cover stories from various Palestine. She's been to almost all the cities, villages, towns, because Shireen knew that every is worth telling and is important for the world to know.
And Lina, I was in Jerusalem a couple of months before her death. I was there in the spring, and I actually used to spend my afternoon sitting on steps of Damascus Gate, Bab al Amud. And one evening, I actually spotted her from the distance. She was
Really?
she had a camera crew and she was chatting. Now, I didn't get to speak to her, but just observing her from afar, she had such an incredible presence to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did. And that was one of her favorite places.
Yeah, what do you hope would be her legacy?
Her legacy to me, I think, is the fact, as I was mentioning earlier, that continuing to amplify voices of Palestinians and just making sure that we speak truth to power. And this is what she did. She spoke truth to power. And she was very empathetic, I would say, very empathetic, very compassionate. And this is, to me, what made her stand out as a journalist. She used her compassion, her empathy to connect with the Palestinians. She wasn't just there as a journalist. She was there as a human being who understood the struggle and understood what it means to be living under an occupation while being a Palestinian, being a woman. So her legacy will continue to live on. And I still run into people who tell me how great of a journalist she was, but also how brave she was as a person, as a journalist. And I think her legacy will be something that will be remembered for generations to come, for her being an amazing journalist, and also for being able to inspire generations of young women and young girls who grew up to be wanting to become journalists, and to making sure that all Palestinians are heard. I think this is her legacy.
Wow, she was definitely an incredible woman, and she's definitely dearly missed by everyone.
Yeah.
Not Palestinians, but everyone that
Yes.
is on the side of history, and journalists and so many people around the world. It's such a huge loss for us.
It is.
And
Yeah.
very grateful though to have you, and it's great to have you as a spokesperson. And I'm sure since it's only the beginning and it's only been about 7 months or 6 months, that this is still very new for you. And we are
Yeah.
here to help you, all of us, me and Lama and Palestine Lobby and Creating Palestine and everyone else we work with. We want to see you thrive, and we want to see justice brought to your family, and even inshallah retribution. I mean, I think this is a huge loss in Palestinian history. So
Yeah.
we're behind you, and anything you need, call upon us. And united, we work together, we work better. We need to stick together. We need to be good to each other, and we also really need to ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone else in our community of activists and of strong women and men as well. So, God bless your family, and,
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support and the fact that you continue to amplify the story, to continue to talk about Shireen and everything else that's happening in Palestine. And with social media now, everyone goes to social media for their daily news, daily updates, and just continuing to talk about Shireen is really important, and we're always grateful for it.
Thank you for being with us today, Lina.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lina.
Thank you for joining us this week on Free Palestine Pod. Subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
And be sure to come back next week for a new episode of Free Palestine Pod. Let's talk Palestine.